we're going to kick things off, and if other folks trickle in a little bit late, that's fine. So this is Jonah Allen from the Brooklyn Borough President's Office. We want to thank everyone for joining to discuss a new proposal that Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams is putting forward to make police departments and particularly precinct commands more accountable to the communities they serve. A couple of housekeeping items. I will be emceeing the event, so please wait until I call on you to speak. Following the speaking order, we will open it up to some questions from the press. And a recording of this will be made available following the event to anyone interested. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Brooklyn Borough President, Eric Adams.
Thank you, Jonah. And I want to thank the men and women from the precinct councils and the community boards throughout the borough of Brooklyn. No one, I believe, or nobody has a greater understanding of what is taking place on our blocks, in our communities, and in our neighborhoods than our precinct councils and our community boards. It is an asset that we often overlook. The 18 community boards here in the borough of Brooklyn, every day they respond to issues and concerns that impact the quality of life of countless number of Brooklynites. And each month our precinct council members meet and discuss the conversation around public safety, as well as throughout the month, many of the leaders and members of the precinct council boards, they deal with issues and interactions between police and the communities that they serve. They knew long before anyone and before it was on the radar that we were having problems with stop and frisk. We were having problems with crime. We were having problems with interactions with our young people in law enforcement. If only we would have taken the time to sit down and communicate with them, so many answers could have come from these bodies on how to effectively create a stronger symbiotic relationship between our law enforcement community and the communities that they serve. I think the call for change must be a smart change, and we must look into how do we properly run our law enforcement agencies. Probably one of the most significant interactions an individual in society can make. Our police agencies have two powers that even the President of the United States does not have: the right to take away liberty and the right to take a life. Those powers require that our law enforcement agencies have a high level of oversight, but not just any type of oversight. They must have oversight on the local grassroots level. And we have not ever put that in place. And we want to change that mindset and that attitude. Our police department should be civilian ran with civilian input on the most important choke points or the most important areas. There is no area more important in law enforcement than your local precincts. Far too often, many precinct commanders have been appointed as part of the Good Old Boys Network. Some of them have come to communities with pre-existing tensions between police and communities, and they have come with a level of abusiveness that has been in their past. The precinct councils, the residents, the community boards, even over their objection, these commanders have been allowed to be put in place in the local precincts. We believe those days must end. That is why today we're asking the mayor to institute an executive order to create a joint review body made up of members of the precinct council and the community board to determine who would be the precinct commander in the local precincts within their geographical boundaries. We believe this board should receive 3 recommendations from the police commissioner on who meets the minimum requirement to be the precinct commander. The board would choose one of the 3. If they cannot come to a majority decision, then by having a supermajority that would include either the city council person that represents the large portion of the board or the borough president, they're able to veto the entire list and receive a new 3 commanders. This is a cosmic shift on how we're policing on a local level. This would allow the direct interaction with precinct council presidents and community board members of ensuring that the commanders would report and respond directly to the concerns of that local precinct. The number of times I have communicated with the leaders in various areas of this borough that they cannot communicate with the commanders of their precinct. They don't receive an immediate call back. Some of the level of interaction with their commanders does not show the level of respect that these important institutions deserve. We believe that must stop. And one of the most recent cases where a young girl was pushed to the ground while walking and peacefully protesting in the current marches. Next to the individual who pushed her was a precinct commander. He had a checkered past when he was in Rockaway. He had a checkered past when he was in the 73rd precinct here in Brownsville. Yet he continued to be a commander of a precinct in a community where there were pre-existing tensions. This is the wrong direction. And so as we talk about the larger pictures of reform, let's do the things that we can do instantly. And nothing would be more important than having the mayor of the city of New York put in place an executive order that would give the civilian organizations in their community the right to determine who would be the precinct commander in their community. That is why we believe this is important. I'm hoping the mayor will do it via executive order. If not, I have been in conversation with Councilman Donovan Richards to see about introducing legislation to put this in law. It would be better to have the mayor and the police commissioner to agree on these changes as a show of good faith of switching the entire conversation around local involvement and choosing the most local level of policing, and that is in our everyday precincts. It is my goal and hope that the marches, the conversation, the move towards changing policing will not only start at one police plaza, but it will start in our local precincts. And there's no better way to do it than involve our precinct community councils and our local community boards. Thank you.
Thank you, Borough President. Next up, we would like to hear from A.T. Mitchell with Community Board 5. You can unmute yourself, A.T.
Yes, thank you, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone, my fellow chairs and other presidents of the precinct councils. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. Thank you, Borough President Adams, again, for rallying us around a very serious and important cause. Malcolm X is one of our greatest leaders ever, had said all politics are local. And in saying that, I think there's no better way of us being able to demonstrate what community policing and accountability looks like. By having the community boards and precinct council be able to make the choice of who will become our commanding officers of our precincts, will do a great justice on a community level. I think on an astronomical level. I believe that the community always wanted to have a voice and a say as to who was going to be those persons in charge of the police officers that police our communities. Often, like you said, They are chosen by the folks up at the One Police Plaza level, and then they are assigned to our communities, and we get to meet them once they come out into the neighborhoods and introduce themselves, or even not. And then we have to broker a relationship with them, try to get to know them better. And oftentimes that's a process. If we had an opportunity to interview these candidates, if we had an opportunity to see their resumes and check their backgrounds, then we have a better chance of being able to feel confident about who's going to be the leader of the police officers that patrol our communities. I can tell you that out here in East New York in the 75th precinct, where my community board is, we currently have a commanding officer who was also one of the officers that was in one of the viral videotapes of when the officers was assaulting a member of our neighborhood, and he was in plain clothes, and he was there, he was present. And so we often was like very surprised to know and learn about why is it that it's okay if the commanding officer is the ones that's going out there and also sanctioning these sort of behaviors, then quite naturally, you're not going to see a change on a community level. So again, I applaud you, Borough President Adams, for asking us to make this executive move in order. I think it's a good move in the right direction at the right time, and our community board stands behind that decision 1,000%. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Next, we'd like to hear from Carl Cohen with the 71st Precinct Council. Carl, if you're on the call, you can unmute yourself. Okay, don't think Carl was able to join. In that case, we'd like to go next to.
He's on. He's just muted. Carl, you're muted right now. Unmute him. He's under Destiny Cohen, I believe.
Carl, can you hear us?
Joan, I believe you can unmute him if you're in control.
Not able to at the moment, so we're going to come back to Carl if we can. Next, we'd like to hear from Delia Hunley-Adossa with the 88th Precinct Council. Delia.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I want to begin by saying thank you very much, Eric. As you well know, because you were in the same command that I've been in for over 25 plus years, working as a council person, community council anyway. We back in, and it's funny that this is coming full circles, 14 plus years ago, in November 2006, when at that time, our commanding officer was Deputy Inspector Pearson. We had sat down and figured out and devised something called the Citizens Advisory Council, which is where we're at today. What you're talking about is exactly what we presented back then to the PCs. And it started with Howard Safer and moved on up. Never really moved. So I'm 2,000% with you. I think our numbers were a slight bit higher. Our pool of recommendation at that time that we had was 4 to 5 candidates. But what the other things you touched on are exactly the same as what we initially came up with back then. In addition to that, we came up with something that we needed a community affairs specialist, we were saying, that they should have and start a pilot program that would be like a NYPD civilian liaison advocate. They would report and work directly with community affairs. They would implement activities. And because most people don't want to interact with police officers, we thought at that time that it would be a good fit because they would more than likely be the ones that people would relish and communicate with. Of course, they would maintain records of activities, accomplishments, so there would be some sort of system that measurements that we can have for these different things. So I'm behind you 2,000%. I also want to go back and give compliments and kudos to something we attempted to start, Kim Bess and a few others at that time. It was called the Council of Presidents, that For some reason, going back, even back to Kanin's time, it was kind of disbanded in a way. It was something that they didn't want. At that time, you had PSAs included as well. So you had Miss Clarissa Moore, you had Mary Andrews, John Mendez, Jean Reynolds, Leslie Lewis, etc., Mr. Corwell, Kim Best. So all of these efforts that you're attempting to do now, not only do you have our full support, but if there's anything that you would like that we've, from the past, because I kept those records from the council president, want to share, I'd be more than welcome to do that. So each journey begins with a single step. That's where we're at. So kudos to all that's participating with regard to this.
Delia, I believe Carl has been able to unmute himself. So if Carl, if you'd like to say a few words, feel free to.
Yes. First, I must say good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to thank Borough President Eric Adams for putting this meeting together, which is highly recommended. For 16 years, I've been president of the 71st Precinct from the days of Garvin Gato when we had the riot, and I have seen most of everything that is happening in the community ever since. I think this is a good way of starting to share our ideas and feelings of what is going on in our community. This is a remarkable time that we are living in, and we just have to do what we have to do to make sure that what happened with Mr. Floyd doesn't happen again. I can say that there is law that has to be implemented to eliminate resisting arrest, because no matter what you do, officers claim that you are resisting arrest. And there is things that we can do for Black and white officers to patrol together, and each one is accountable for the other one. I am very humbled to share my experience with any officers that is coming in the precinct to be our commanding officers. We must remember that we still have good police officers. And I am asking for those bad officers to take their knees off the neck of good officers so they can breathe, so they can go home and retire and be the citizens that they would like to be. Over the years, I have seen different changes, but this one, I hope this is for real. So I just want to say that I'm here for you 100%, Borough President, and I hope the mayor will adhere to what you're saying and move forward so we all can live in peace on this earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate it. Last, we'd like to hear from Genese Morgan with Community Board 16. To those we weren't able to get to, we apologize. But following Genese, we're going to open it up to questions from the press, if there are any. Thank you very much.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you, Borough President Eric Adams, for holding this press conference and for your leadership and for representing the voice of the residents that reside in Ocean Hill, Brownsville, and across Brooklyn. I do, as Community Board Chairperson of Brooklyn Community Board 16, which serves the Ocean Hill and Brownsville community in Brooklyn, support the legislation that will potentially allow the community to have more input in the commanding officers at a place in the community. And I speak to this, you know, as a resident of the community, as a chairperson of the community, and as a Block Association president. And so I deal with the community and the police department on multiple levels and have had different interactions with them at each level. And I think that there is a responsibility for the commanding officer to preserve the culture of police practices across any level of leadership in the community. The commanding officer should be considered a first level of mediation in the community, and we should trust the commanding officer, and we should expect that the commanding officer would be able to carry out the progress that we've made with any prior commanding officer. We've had some great relationships with some of the past commanding officers. We've made tremendous progress. We've seen our commanding officers show up in ways that we probably hadn't expected that they were able to show up in. And so a commanding officer should not be allowed to come into the community and take the community backwards. That in and of itself is an oppressive practice. When a community makes progress, when they overcome challenges with the police department, and then a commanding officer comes in and then takes the community backwards. And so if we have an opportunity to speak with the commanding officers, know what their practices have been when they've been in other police precincts, then we have an ability to bring in a commanding officer that meets the needs of the communities and can bring the work that we've been doing forward. And so for those reasons alone, I support having more community input. And additionally, Brownsville has a ton of youth in the community. You know, being able to be a visionary as a commanding officer and come in with ideas as to how they will, integrate themselves and, work with the youth in the community so that we don't have growing issues in the community around areas of, public safety is extremely important. And my community, I know, I'm happy to be joined by a few of our active community leaders, Ms. Margaret Brewer, who previously served as the public safety chairperson, Ms. Linda Rivera, who just recently brought to my attention a grievance around public safety in the community. And so having a commanding officer that we can now take those issues to, that can help us to diffuse those issues, who can guide us on what the protocols are, I think is important. And so I'm looking for that level of community engagement and interaction with the commanding officer. And so for those reasons, I support having that interview process and making sure that we can all agree on who will be leaders in our community. The same process exists at every other level of leadership. And so it should happen at that level as well.
Thank you very much. We're actually going to hear from two more speakers before we take questions, but to members of the press that are looking to ask questions of the BP or anyone else who's spoken, you can feel free to raise your hand in the app and we can get to you, or just write in the chat and we'll read out your question. But we're going to hear first from Anthony Newels. I apologize if I mispronounced your name, from the 73rd Precinct Council, followed by Robert Camacho from Community Board 4. So first, Anthony.
Peace and blessings, everyone. I'm not going to be long. I commend you, Borough President, because in this process that we're speaking of, and I pay homage to Delia Hunley-Adossa and Dr. Bess, other Precinct Council presidents that led the way and paved the way for me to be here. But for years, Borough President, that this system that you're speaking about have been trying to be put in place. But the NYPD have a culture above our heads that keep systematically destroying these type of initiatives that's put in place. The last time we all came together as presidents in Brooklyn North to get what we wanted, was when Chief Madre was appointed. We all fought for Chief Madre, who continued the great work that we've been doing after Chief Nelson left. They answered our calls, and you all know that that was the right call, because throughout Brooklyn North, we all identified everywhere he went, he brought community relations with him. We was very loud in that. We got what we wanted. And Borough President, that shows you and strengthens your argument that this is what works when we have a voice in what we're doing. Genese and Margaret is fighting daily, but I can tell you, I was one of the people that did not want the CO that recently left, Inspector Edelman. We did not. We did not want anyone placed in our community that had a troubled past, and then you bring him in this community, but we didn't know his troubled past. We didn't know what was the troubled past, but what you've seen in the video is what we've been seeing in Brownsville every other day. the culture has been changing when you have these type of people commanding leadership in the police department, Borough President. So I absolutely applaud your effort. I'm in full support of it. Right now, rest in peace, George Floyd. But ladies and gentlemen, right now is the time for change. Normally we saying no justice, no peace, and what normally happens, we keep giving them peace all the time. We giving them so much peace that they're taking pieces of us day by day, and they're killing us, and it's not right. We need justice, Borough President. I fully support you. We have the strongest community board members that I have ever seen. We have the strongest elected officials, the strongest precinct council presidents, and the strongest borough president since I've been in community relations. And now is the time, Borough President, for us to follow you, and you lead us to making this happen so we can change the culture and the community level of police community relations. We do have it right, Borough President. Deputy Inspector Terrell Anderson is at the 73rd Precinct now. We have it right. He's a community person, and we're gonna support him, rally around him, and help him heal the police and community relationship. I just wanted to let that be known. Thank you all for the work y'all doing, and that was it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
How do I get my, I don't know how to use this, I'm in the car.
Sorry, I'm gonna mute folks. Last, we'd like to hear from Robert Camacho with CB4, and then we're gonna open it up to questions. Mr. Camacho.
Thank you, Mr. Eric Adams, for all that you do in helping us and supporting us in every way, especially in Bushwick. We had a character a year ago, a commanding officer that didn't want to do community relations, that the clergies, the A3 precinct, the community board, all the elected officials went there, and we were trying to remove him because he was doing absolutely opposite of what we wanted him to do. Now we have a good one, and he's doing what he has to do because he's helping the community. For too long, the community had no say in picking in which community officers would represent the precinct. So it's time for change. We need to change that now. I remember the last commanding officer that was there, he closed down Knickerbocker, and none of the Puerto Ricans could celebrate Puerto Rican Day Parade. He took my culture and bashed it, and then we had the kids recording it, saying how he put all the cops on there to stop us. I went to Chief Mandry. I spoke to the elected officials, and I said, listen, since you're closing it down, why not do the first Puerto Rican Day, Knickerbocker Day Parade, and then let them celebrate, send them on their way, and then be quiet. Did you know that it worked? That same night, there was no issues, no problem. So they need to listen to the community. They need to know the stakeholders and the people that have been here that have needs in our community. We need to stop locking us up, and let's work together to do the right thing. And I thank you, thank you, thank you. And may God bless you and give you all the strength to give us and keep us from moving forward. I have been in Bushwick all my life. I'm on the border of Bed-Stuy and Bushwick. I'm on Broadway side. And it's a hard pill to deal with both sides, but we're gonna make it happen. And I know with your strength and your power, we're gonna make it happen. If you don't, then we're gonna have to put it into law. And we're gonna have to, if they wanna put in a referendum for the people to vote on it, then I believe that everybody will step up and vote on what you want. Thank you, God bless you, and thank all of your staff for making this happen.
Thank you, Mr. Camacho, appreciate it. We're open to questions for the Borough President or anyone who's spoken. You can feel free to unmute yourself.
Jonah, if I can, before we open questions to the press, Brothers Camacho's comments really resonated with me because I don't think many people understand the power of a precinct commander. I've witnessed precinct commanders that don't know anything about communities come in and dictate and rob the culture of those communities. I've witnessed them deny block associations from having block parties that they've had for years merely because they may have been a shooting weeks ago on the block. I've witnessed the denial of permits I've witnessed the denial of holding events, of doing just things that are part of the culture of the community. And far too often, these commanders are overwhelmingly white, and they come into communities that are extremely diverse, people of color, and they have no real connections. Every once in a while, you're fortunate to have a commander that just really comes in with an idea of how do I become part of the community. But this master plantation mindset is something that needs to change on a local level. And what Brother Camacho mentioned is so important. The number of calls I received of how permits are denied. There's no real order to why they were denied. The unwillingness to allow people to host their cultural events and festivities. Not just being willing to create this correct relationship. And when you look at the number of years that Ms. Adossa and A.T. Mitchell and others have been leaders in their community, yet they have no input on someone that can come in, as it was mentioned, and change the entire direction of what has been created. That is unacceptable. And so this initiative is so important. It may not seem a lot to those who are far removed from where the rubber meets the road, but these community board presidents, these precinct council presidents, they know what it means to be able to have that relationship with a good commander and give him the information so he could do his job correctly and be able to protect the public. Police know how to take guns off the street. These leaders know how to ensure those guns never get on the street in the first place. That's the proactive policing we're looking for. Jonah, we'll answer any questions.
Any questions from the press, from Borough President? You can write in the chat or unmute yourself.
Is this just for press members?
Right now it is, yes. Okay. Seeing none, you're welcome to ask your question.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Margaret Brewer, former Public Safety Chairperson, Community Board 16. And this is Borough President Adams. I want to say thank you for affording us this opportunity. I really appreciate having this as a serious topic. I served as 7 years as Public Safety for Community Board 16. Several commanders. I've sent my letters to Borough Hall. This is tremendous. We were able in our district to make some solid turns towards positivity. And I will agree that the precinct commander is able and did change the whole climate of Brownsville. We were making strides. People were feeling included and positive about being here, safe. And if I could use that word free, it's a broad word, but a little freedom was here. There was happiness. Things changed. Yeah, the rules with the block parties does change the climate. When people are told no, like children, you keep telling them no and stop and don't, it does create a frustration. It does create a behavioral problem. I ask that with this oversight, that the recommendations that may come out of the community, please be taken seriously and supported. That was one of the issues that I had. We were taking the time and having the meetings and having the conversations and coming up with real solutions from the community, and it wasn't supported. We've written the pledges. We've done several things out of Brownsville here that was good for both sides, but more importantly, people need to feel good about being here. We can't keep paying people to hurt us. So yes, again, this is very important. we need to do it. We need to do it with moral integrity. And I am willing to lend whatever I can, from 13 years of being a first responder, 7 years sitting here as your public safety chair, whatever I can do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brian S., you can unmute yourself. I see you raised your hand.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And I'd just like to say I commend you, Borough President Adams, and everyone else who's here. And as you know, precinct commanders, they set the temperature for every precinct that they come into. And we as a community and yourself, we need to make sure that we can test this temperature before we let them out. And I say guide their troops or their officers. I've been around 77 precinct with James Caldwell, and I've known other people, Anthony Newell, Adossa, and I've seen the struggles that he's been through. I watched him change the perception in the mind of other precinct commanders as they come in. And some they come in harsh or just the mindset of dictatorship. We need, what you're doing is absolutely needed. We need to sit down, see who's coming into our community, because we live in our community and they go back home to their community. So we need to see what's going on and see how can they come and help us, benefit us. So far we've been good, we've been lucky, but we can't go by luck. Or we have to sit and see and require and make sure that they provide what we need, because we know what we need in our community. They only know what they need from the police academy. So I commend you. I thank everyone for being here. I'm a little nervous and everything like that, but I just want to speak from my heart, and I appreciate the chance to speak. And thank you, and continue doing what you're doing.
Thank you very much. We want to be sensitive to the Borough President's time and everyone else on this call. So I think we'll open it up to one more person. And I saw Dr. Kim Best had something she wanted to say. And then I think we're going to close it out. But a recording of this will be made available, and a press release will be sent out with more information following this call. So Dr. Best, we're going to let you have the final word.
Okay.
Doctor, seems like you're muted.
Oh, boy.
We can hear you now.
Dr. Best, you're muted again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Some years ago, there was a few of us precinct council presidents that wanted to see change in the NYPD. And one of the things that we did, those that are still here with us, we wanted diversity with the NYPD. We had seen for years that it was always Caucasian chiefs and so forth in the NYPD. And we met with Commissioner Kelly. Remember, Dee? We met with Commissioner Kelly, and we was able to make some changes in the department. So for those people that just came on in the last 10 years or whatever, a few of us precinct council presidents have made some major changes, and we're looking forward to continue working with you, Borough President, as well. Okay? So that's really all I have to say. And I'm so happy that this is really starting to come in place. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Best. So we want to thank everyone for joining. As a reminder, a recording and a press release will be sent out following this event. I understand that, Borough President, you wanted to keep a couple of people on the call. So those that were not asked, we thank you again for joining us. you're welcome to log off now.
Robert, can you hang out also, please? Camacho?
Me? Camacho?
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right. Okay. Thanks, everyone else.
Thank you, Borough President.
Thank
Bye.
you. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So BP, you wanted Mr. Newels, Mr. Camacho, and AT to hang on, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Great. Members of the press, I'm gonna remove you. Thank you for joining.
Hey guys,